All right, Micah, lesson number 4 here. So, very nice improvements. But before I get into the actual footage on the left, I wanted to point out something at address, and this is very important. I would strongly recommend backing your feet up to maybe about here. So, everything at address is fine, but I would simply back your feet up about 3 or 4 inches. So, what I've done here, drawn a line in the back of your hips down towards the ground, and with Hogan, notice there's only a couple inches of space, but the angle on the spine here looks perfect. You're not too upright, you're not hunched over, but what backing your feet up will do, it's going to have the weight more in the balls of your feet, and you're going to be tipped out over the ball more. And another example would be Adam Scott. So again, line in the back of the hips, there's just a little bit of space behind the heels, so there's not a ton of knee flex. And then if you draw a line from the shoulders working down, we can see he's tipped out over the ball. And the reason why this is, in my opinion, very important is it's going to help you make a steeper shoulder turn, which will be one of the highlights of this lesson. So this is me. I just wanted to show you this. Now, even I could back my feet up maybe an inch or two, but we can notice my left foot, it's slightly elevated, and as I take the club back, I'm really going to try in my mind to lift it more, which it's not going to happen in reality, but that will stabilize the lower body as we discussed. So check this out here. I'm going to try and turn back as steep as I can and exaggerate this. So right away, check out the axis of the shoulders here, or the angle as to which I'm turning on. And the reason why I think that is important is when you turn steep, and I'm really just driving my left shoulder straight down towards the ground, as I'm able to get into a decent position at the top where the head is lowered. And once again, we talked about the hips getting deeper relative to where they started. Now, I'm not Anthony Kim or Hogan, so if you look at the last lesson, you'll see better examples of this, but even in the downswing, their head went even a touch lower, and their hips went back even more, where I might lose a touch of depth, but I'm still in okay shape, because the right arm, when you turn steep, it's easier to get the right arm more in front of the body before you go into impact. And I think that's very important, because when the right arm is in front, you can achieve forward shaft lean, which we'll talk about later in the lesson from the face-on view. So one more time, just to underscore this, here's me on the left trying to create tilt, still photograph at the top of the swing. Number 2 in the world, Dustin Johnson, he does an incredible job of creating bend at the waist. Anterior pelvic tilt is the anatomical term, but it's kind of redundant to mention that. So anyways, we'll just call it, try and create a steeper shoulder turn. So with you're losing angle here, and then you're gaining angle here at the shin joint. So again, or ankle joint. So with DJ, it's more vertical, and then more tilt. And then with me again, it's going to be a bit more vertical at the ankle joint, and then a steeper turn. So that left foot up drill will help, and then alter your posture. Let's go to your footage though. All right, so here you are from down the line. So a lot of improvement since last time. And I know the sunlight in this particular shot, it's a little bit hard to see, but I'm noticing the line on the hips and the head, it's again way better than last time. So before we get to that, of course, let's look at the takeaway. Just a little bit underneath the plane. So again, instead of your left shoulder moving this way, what I would recommend is trying to get it to drive straight down towards the ground at the beginning, and keep working on with. Alright, so again, as you go back, a little bit flat here, but nonetheless, the hips are doing a much better job of staying back. In the last lesson, I remember they were notably off the line at this point. And then your head, it's maintaining its level, so it's not bobbing up longer term, I'd love to see the head go down by the time you're at the top of the swing. But again, for only 2 weeks, this is a lot better here. So probably sound like a broken record, but again, I would just like to keep working on that ankle joint, getting a little bit more vertical, opposed to shooting out this way. The knee movement, though, is much closer to symmetrical than last time. So let's play the transition here. And again, it's hard to see based on the lighting, but it looks like your hips are just sliding out underneath you a bit. But much better lower body rotation. Check out how much more of the back of your left leg we can see, where I remember in the last lesson, your hips were very slow to rotate. So some really good stuff here. Shaft, as always, it's parallel to the plane line, so looking great there. Now the right arm at this point is a little bit stuck behind the body, which I'll explain when we move to the face-on view. I think when you get that right arm more in front of you, you can create more lag, and you often hear this if you watch the Golf Channel and people talk about achieving forward shaft lean, so that'll be easier to see from the other view. All right. So just one other thing I'm noticing, not to overload with information, but it looks like your left heel is sliding or popping off the ground a bit. So if you do some slow motion rehearsals right as you come into the ball, just try and drive as much weight as humanly possible into that left heel so it's firmly planted. But again, for only a couple weeks, this is excellent. Much better lower body rotation. All right, let's look at the other angle. All right, so here you are from face on. Nice camera angle here. And what I like to do when I'm practicing is I'll hit maybe 6 shots, go check my iPhone or my camera, make sure I'm doing it right. And if I'm not, then I'll go back and hit 6 more shots, and I'll pretty much constantly keep checking the camera during my range or practice sessions. But anyways, much better look at setup from this angle. Lower body action is way better. There's that gap that we're looking for. So remember in the last lesson you were over here making a reverse pivot. So definitely more weight going into the right side. And I like this because this is about the right amount of lean. You're not like swaying off the ball, but on the same token, you're not making a reverse pivot. If you look up the stack and tilt guys, it's a disaster. They'll turn back and then their spine angle's like over here. So we never want that. And then a little bit of shift here. I'd like to see a little bit more of a lateral drive with the hips, even though they're rotating much better than before. All right, so let's remove some of these lines, and I want to talk about the hinge in the right arm action, since the lower body is looking way more stable. All right, so right about here, we get to P2 when the club is parallel. Notice how your shoulders are pretty level at this point. Again, we like to see that left shoulder down more and your right shoulder turning more. So at P2, we like to see a little bit more turn going on. And then the width is improved since last lesson, but I think there could still be more space yet. So you really have to feel like you're reaching. And then pause you at P3. Right about here, I'm going to draw the angle. So again, I think I mentioned this in the last lesson. Ideally, I would like to see you about at 90 degrees. And then from there, we can increase the hinge on the way down. So let's see where we're at. All right, so it looks like you're pretty much matching the angle on the way back. So that's an improvement again from last time, because last time you actually had more hinge on the way back than you did on the way down, and now you're at the point where it's dead even. So I think we could still work on that. You're definitely moving in the right direction. Just get you to 90 degrees here. So the club again is here, and then on the way down really add more hinge. And when you do that, And this is this whole discussion about the right elbow. So the right elbow, to me, when I look at this, it's, I think, stuck a little bit behind you. And then as a result of that, you don't have a ton of forward shaft lean. So here's the club, right, coming into the ball. Whereas if you watch the Golf Channel, or in fact, to make it easy, I'm going to pull up some examples, but usually at this point, we'd like to see the club actually trailing more, so you can compress the ball and have forward shaft lean, and the right elbow is more in front of the rib cage. But again, for only 2 weeks, way better than before. I mean, look at this position at the top here. Again, the gap, the knees are way more level, just all around a lot more stable. So let's look at some images. So here you are on the left coming into impact, and this is what I'm referring to as far as the shaft lean, because we have Dustin Johnson on the right, so we can see that his hands are well ahead of the ball, and your hands are just a little bit on the opposite side. So he's going to come in and make really solid contact, and again we can see that his right arm, just kind of mark it here, is in front of his right hip, whereas your right arm is here, and it's kind of hard to see your right hip. So he's really going to drive that right arm in front of the body, have that forward shaft lean. Of course, part of that will help as you transfer your weight this way on the way down and work on your tilt and turn. So let me close this out by showing you one other example. So I figured I would close this out with Tommy Fleetwood. He's been within the top 50 world rankings pretty much constantly over the last 5 years or so. So check out this action. This is really superb. Big time width here. And anytime you're trying to make a change, you'll have to stretch your imagination and really exaggerate it. And then when we get to P3 on the way back, which would be right here, he's just a bit shy of 90 degrees, which is fine. You know, if he was at 90, it would be about here. And notice throughout this backswing, you know, at this point, even if we back up the frames between P2 and P3, we can see he's already got a nice amount of turn going on. So the left shoulder went down, right shoulder is going back up. So here's P3. Now let's keep our eye on that right arm action. It's on top of the left arm, but that's going to dramatically change on the way down. So now we can see it digging in. And then by the time we get to P5, somewhere in here, he clearly has more angle than he did at P3. P3 was over here, and P5 is here. And there's that right elbow remaining underneath the left arm. It's going to get in front of the rib cage, and then there's that trailing shaft, or forward shaft lean as we might call it, to compress the ball. Alright, so that'll give you some stuff to study and work on. Phenomenal job with the lower body. And let me know if you have any questions and how things go.